have been tracking the global trends very closely, and we've been in regular contact with people in the United Kingdom, the US, and across Australia. Initially, the trends that we were seeing were very similar to ours. There was pre-lockdown, the lockdown, and then the post-lockdown. We've recently split away from that in Victoria here with our trends, and we've found that the final part of the Victorian lockdown has actually set us in motion in a whole new direction. We've seen consistent confidence throughout regional Victoria, which has demonstrated the property market's resilience with a high demand for both sale and rental properties, coupled with a steady supply of properties coming to market. We've seen Metro remain a stronger player than was initially forecast. I'm sure many of you were watching the news at the time, and you probably saw people talking about how we were expecting a 20% or a 30% or even a 50% at one stage reduction in property values when this all first hit. It hasn't been the case at all. In fact, properties have been selling and leasing quite quickly as a general rule, and we haven't seen a huge drop at all in property prices. Interestingly, the rental demand, according to realestate.com, has only gone down 5%, which is staggering to note based on the circumstances. That being said, there is an air of caution across the state, which is affecting Metro more so than regional, which simply means that the bounce back that we'd hoped would happen really quickly straight after, it hasn't quite reached that level that we had hoped in the metro areas particularly. You will hear us talk a lot about metro and regional now, and your property managers or the directors or your contacts at Stockdale Leggo may have started using these different terminology. We've actually had to change the language that we're using within our own organisation, and we have to reference the different areas to align with where the Victorian market stands today based on what the government zonings are. So 6 months ago, it was a loose term to say, you know, regional or metro. Victoria, a lot of times, was actually thrown into a bundle, but it's no longer the case. In fact, we've seen some micro markets appear within markets. So we really need to drill down even further than before to obtain accurate data for a suburb and even a street now. Interesting to note, search criteria has evolved for both tenants and landlords, and for buyers and people looking to sell. One very obvious shift is the home office and even the home gym, actually. With so many people working from home now, many are hoping to continue to do so when things open up again, with workplaces adapting to a more flexible structure. We're hearing a lot about sea change and tree change, more so than ever before. People who were sitting on the fence have now climbed over, and now our regional offices have seen a spike in Melbourne buyers and inquiries coming through. Interestingly, some of the feedback we get is that some areas are seeing a spike with retirees, particularly who are fast forwarding their plans to move to the country. Our Darwin office is overwhelmed by the increase of people moving north. You know, they liken it to the birds are all flying north. So Queensland has been the same. To delve a little bit deeper into this and to share some experiences that our offices have had across the state, it's almost as if Melburnians and Victorians have taken a little bit of a step out. So Melbourne CBD, we'll start with that one. I would say the hardest hit of any property market across Victoria. Those who are living right up in the CBD have now started to move out to those outer suburbs. Melbourne as a suburb, just as an example, is heavily apartment based, as many of you know. At the moment, if you search on realestate.com.au, the number of properties available for rent in Melbourne as a 3,000 postcode is at 4,800 properties. That's nearly 5,000 apartments in Melbourne CBD that's available. In my previous life, I would actually track this number specifically, and it used to hover around about 2,000, and that would include surrounding suburbs. This, you know, one of the big contributing factors to this, I had a very interesting number the other day, very interesting statistic, that the international students, as an example, have reduced. There's usually around 55,000 that come into the country throughout the year to study. There are 50. And I don't mean 50,000, I mean 50. So education is one of Australia's largest exports. So this will be having a massive impact on the economy. So there are now an extra, in addition to that, there are an extra 55,000 properties in Melbourne and surrounds that are empty as a direct result of this reduction in the population. Outer suburban Melbourne has seen a bit of caution, but there is strength with properties entering the market. People are loving, a little bit of extra space, the gardens, the parks. They're no longer feeling that they need to live a stone's throw away from the office. They're seeing a future of working from home, probably more of a hybrid from what we're doing at the moment in Metro. I'm in Metro, so I've been in lockdown now for 3 months. But I think a lot of people are thinking when they come out of this, hopefully there's some form of a balance. So instead of being in the office 5 days, it might only go down to 2 days in the office. So the commute of going into the city 5 days a week might only be 2. So it's a little bit more appealing and not such a daunting prospect. The buyer and tenant pool is quite consistent in the suburban Melbourne areas. But we have seen a bit of an increase there with people willing to stretch their pre-COVID boundaries for a bit more space. So some people had that limit of how far they were willing to go, and they've pushed out 1, maybe 2 suburbs further than they would have done probably 12 months ago. Regional Victoria has been quite interesting. We've almost divided this into 2 areas. So we've got the boundary of the metro bubble. So those that are on the cusp of the Ring of Steels, areas like your Bannockburn, Bacchus Marsh, Geelong, Wirrup. A number of these buyers and tenants are coming from Metro, but they can't leave that bubble that is the stage 4 lockdown to go and inspect a property. So everyone's sort of at that starting gate waiting for the gun to go off. These areas, they're waiting for the landlords and tenants, vendors and buyers to be able to step through the barrier to transact. So that's either to bring their property to market or to sell the property, to buy the property or to move in. Belmont and Frankston, interestingly, are in the top 10 most searched areas, outside of a capital city within Australia. And the top 10 for country Victoria are all within the greater Geelong area and the Mornington Peninsula. The strength in some of the regional towns has been quite phenomenal. One example I'll provide, our Warrnambool office. They took a property to market only a few weeks ago, and due to the inability to perform and open for inspection, they were doing private inspections. From the moment that property went to market, to get everybody through, our director there had to do 62 private inspections of one property. He actually got to a point, he said, I feel like I need to pitch a tent in the front yard or at least move into here, because he felt like he had been there solidly for a week. But it's an indication of the strength of the market and the demand for that area. So regional Victoria has been a little bit more consistent throughout the pandemic, but the restrictions have been less of an impact on the ability to transact in property. So it's only natural that they're going to be able to move more so than Metro. Across Victoria, we are all now operating the same business in the same industry, but under totally different regulations and restrictions. And last Sunday meant that we can now do auctions. There have been slight easing for Metro and regional as well. But we are in very different circumstances. Not only that, but we're now working and responding to the same flow-on effect from the economic impacts, which has affected all areas at such varying degrees. While we're aware that it's not all good news, and it has been exceptionally difficult for some, and I'd like to assure those people who have been adversely impacted and struggled to hold their properties this year. History, statistics and our learnings tell us that it's not a case of if the recovery occurs, it's just a case of when. Melbourne and regional Victoria will recover from this, and they will emerge stronger than ever. You would have seen a number of our marketing posts with the catchphrase, "We've got this," because we do. Melbourne is a national and an international favourite. It's been the most livable city multiple times. Victoria is a brilliant place to live and explore. So I'm going to invite Naomi from realestate.com.au to go into a little bit more detail around the trends. We speak with realestate.com.au on a very, very regular basis, and we draw on them for a lot of the information and the data and the trends. So Naomi, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Really excited to present to you all today and share with you insights that we're seeing here at realestate.com.au in the market. I thought I'd just kick it off with, what are the top trends we are seeing? So can you just confirm, Charlotte, you can see my screen, my slides?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So things are recovering in Victoria and particularly Metro Melbourne. now private inspections have recommenced. So rental demand is actually up 46% year on year on our site. Like Charlotte mentioned, regional has performed exceptionally well, and we are seeing regional searches are up 136% since April. So yes, Melbourne Metro people cannot get out to the regions legally to inspect, but there is that surge in traffic. And while the rental market is improving, there is still a large amount of listings on our site in those areas that are close to universities and heavily rely on foreign students. As Charlotte mentioned, there's just been a huge reduction of immigration from foreign students into the country, and that has impacted places like Melbourne, which now have, you know, close to 5,000 apartments advertised on our site. So here at realestate.com.au, we track rental demand, and what we do is we track high intent rental behaviour across the year and year on year. Nationally, last week, it rose by 2.4%. During stage 4 lockdowns, when private inspections were banned, we did see a huge decline in Victoria, just like we did at the start of the pandemic. But now private inspections are back on. We are seeing an increase, and Victoria has increased week on week and performed the strongest nationally, which is no surprise now that renters can go out and finally inspect properties. And we've seen obviously a lot more properties hit the market. Rental demand has been weak during the pandemic, and that has flowed through to investors, so much so that investors on our site, their inquiries in the buy section are actually down 30% year on year. But the rental market is improving, and we are seeing a reduction of rental listings on our site. And this is very different to the early days of the pandemic, when we just saw a flood of listings hit the site. Although the rental market is improving, as Charlotte mentioned, there are pockets which are still very much impacted, and that tends to be at the moment where listings are rising, those still close to universities and that rely on foreign students. So what are the 10 most searched suburbs in Victoria for rent that we're seeing? Melbourne, South Yarra, South Bank, Docklands, they all feature in the top 10. And at the moment, we know they do have high vacancy rates. What we are seeing is a lot of tenants and also landlords really carefully monitoring the market. Popular suburbs that generally always appear on the top 10, places like Richmond, St Kilda, Elwood, really popular for renters. Places that are out of the suburbs like Point Cook, which are affordable. And surprisingly, we see Geelong on the top 10, and generally regional doesn't actually make an appearance in the top 10. But as mentioned, we've seen a huge increase, people wanting to work from home, people's lifestyles changing. So regional is growing in popularity as well. So what drives rental popularity and makes these suburbs so enticing? Affordability is key. So all of those suburbs you saw in the top 10 do have affordable median weekly rents. Low number of properties, generally speaking, will drive demand. However, saying that, you know, we are seeing a lot of tenants and landlords monitoring the market and search volumes high where there is high vacancy rates. Places that have good cafes, restaurants, retailing are all super important to tenants. Richmond featuring in the top 10. And, you know, no surprise, a lot of young Australians that rent love and want to live near the beach. So hence Elwood and St Kilda featuring in the top 10 as well. Important to note, places that might be near the beach, take a Brighton that, you know, has great cafes, restaurants, retailing, but isn't affordable, you know, it isn't as much in demand with tenants. So what's in store for the rental market for 2020 and beyond? Charlotte said it, you know, you can't crystal ball what is going to happen, but looking at trends we're seeing on the site, things like the federal budget. So that was released the other week, and it was centred around providing infrastructure expenditure, getting people back to work, and giving tax cuts to those so they can, you know, go out and spend money. The great thing to come out of the federal budget for tenants and landlords is more job security for renters. So having borne the brunt of COVID-19 job losses, the federal government is offering incentives to encourage businesses to hire eligible young job seekers under its job maker hiring credit scheme. So eligible employers will be paid for new employees under 35 between $100 and $200 a week. So this measure will bolster job security for COVID hit young Australians, many of whom are tenants. They're struggling to pay rent. They've been negotiating with their landlords, and this measure could help maintain demand in Australia's rental market, as fewer tenants will be forced to move out of their home due to rental arrears. Investor inquiry and demand, like I mentioned before, is significantly down on our site. And while it is a renter's market at the moment, when the economy does kick back in again with less investors in the market, this will be problematic, and that will actually drive rental prices up. So that is something to watch for as well. Thank you very much. Lovely to provide the update. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Naomi. I will say it's been really wonderful working so closely with you, and we will continue to do so. We appreciate the knowledge, the experience and the statistics that we receive so frequently from realestate.com.au. It's certainly helped us as we've navigated through this year and as we continue to grow and adapt. Next, I'd like to introduce Leah Calnan. Leah is the president of the Real Estate Institute of Victoria. She is quite a phenomenal woman. She has been working 24/7 since all of this began, and she's been doing that to fight for all Victorian homeowners. We have been exceptionally lucky to have a president with a property management background, as her experience has proved invaluable over the last 12 months. So much so that the Real Estate Institute of Victoria, the board, has actually requested that she remain for a further term. It's extremely uncommon for this to happen. But a great way to demonstrate what an amazing job she's doing, and she's doing that to ensure that you're all looked after and all us real estate agents are looked after as well. So Leah's going to discuss a couple of key topics. The moratorium, which some of you, it might be a little bit close to your heart. You may have your own situations that you're experiencing, and also the changes to the Residential Tenancies Act and how they will be rolled out across the state. So Leah, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is where I get very nervous to share my screen. Okay, why are we not working? All right, we have a small problem. My screen is not sharing for some reason.
That's okay. Leah, I've got your presentation here, so I'll set it for you.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Otherwise, I could talk through it. That would be fine as well. All right, so whilst that comes up, I will know that that's all going to be happening. So as Charlotte mentioned, I am, my current role is obviously with the, as the president of the REIV, but also very heavily involved with the, in the residential tenancy space as a property manager. Are you able to flick through, Amy, for me? Yeah, perfect. All right, so you just go back. Yeah, okay, next. Yeah, all right, we'll start. Thank you. All right, so come on or before the 29th of March, we have approximately 130 changes taking effect with regards to the Residential Tenancy Act. So you'll start to hear more in regards to this. You'll start to see new terminology being used over the coming months. The reason owners haven't had a lot of information coming out at the moment in regards to this particular area of change is because the regulations which we need to understand and learn as property managers to work with, making sure that we're able to understand the legislation to educate all the landlords and tenants haven't come through from government just yet. So we are waiting for that, and then once that happens, it will be rolled out to the state. Next slide. So we have, obviously when the COVID hit us on the 28th of March this year, not only did the Prime Minister, but the Andrews government introduced an eviction moratorium. And effectively, it has had some consequences on for landlords. There's a couple of key areas that we're still challenged and battling away in this particular space. The first one is that whilst it does say that you can't be evicted, there are certain reasons why a tenancy can end. And if you're needing to sell your property or if you're needing to move into your property, there is a different process now that the property managers need to undertake in order to end that tenancy. There are still some issues in regards to ending tenancies for willful non-payment of rent. So this is a particular area that we are closely monitoring and liaising with government and also the different parts of consumer affairs and VCAT. One of the other considerations that landlords need to understand for the eviction moratorium is that it has put a hold on any rent increases taking effect. So now there are no rent increases taking effect until after March next year. There's going to be no gap between the end of the moratorium and the commencement of the Amendment Act. So previously, if we go back a few months ago, property managers have effectively been turned upside down. They've been living in a bit of a snow globe. They were working with the Residential Tenancy Act 1997. Come the end of March, they moved into the moratorium and the Omnibus Bill. We've been working with that and we anticipated that would end around the 28th of September. It was then extended until the end of December, and now it's been extended until the end of March. And when that moratorium ends, we'll go straight into the new Amendment Act. And that's when those 130 changes come into effect. So some of the changes include, and these are going to be important points for landlords to be aware of. The first one that we've noted for today is the change in names. So landlords will now be called residential rental providers and tenants will now be called renters. It was something that, for some reason, it was a high priority on the Andrews government's list to make sure that there were some name changes here. The next one that we'll see is the formalisation of the annual smoke alarm. So for most investors over the last 10 years or so, they've been participating in an annual smoke alarm program. Now it's actually legislated and it will be deemed as an urgent repair. So any time that a property manager goes out and completes a routine inspection, in the event that they find that the smoke alarm isn't working, they'll need to action it immediately. We'll see the introduction of the annual servicing of gas appliances. So things like your ducted heating, your gas cooktop, your gas space heater, and also electrical safety checks. So again, servicing of split systems. There'll also be the introduction of additional checks in this particular space. We also need to consider things like with the electrical safety check around, if you're supplying white goods as part of your tenancy. So if you're supplying not just a dishwasher, which is pretty much the norm, but if you're supplying a washing machine or you're supplying a microwave, for example, we're still waiting to see in those regulations if they have to be tagged and tested, which we are anticipating. It's probably more likely than not. And we'll also see that there will be some introduction to the compulsory instalment of safety switches as well for those properties that don't have them still. Next one. So swimming pool compliance, which is the great one that we're finally seeing some regulations in this particular space. So we know the deadline is coming up to the 1st of November for everyone that has a pool that was constructed on or before the 30th of June 1994. You need to make sure that you have lodged your compliance certificate by this particular date. Pool service inspections and barrier inspections will be every 4 years, and it will be needing to be conducted by a specialist in that field. We're anticipating that council will have those nominated people, but also through the Victorian Building Authority, we'll also have some nominated experts in this space. you will need to lodge your compliance certificate on an every 4 years, and there'll be some compliance requirements on that as well. So for anyone that's planning on putting pools or spas in after the 1st of November, you need to make sure that your compliance certificate is lodged within 30 days of the date of the issue of the certificate. And as I said, then it's going to be a rolling 4 years. As we head into summer, it's really important that you need to consider if you have a tenant that might put up a portable pool. Portable pools do require the compulsory barrier support around them. So it's not just a simple yes or no. If a tenant makes a request to, go to Aldi or go to Clark Rubber and buy a pool, you need to make sure that you are complying with council. So this is an area that we need to make sure, and particularly property managers need to liaise with landlords in this particular space. Next one, Amy. Changes to how late rent is going to be managed. This is probably one of the more difficult aspects of the changes with the legislation. There will effectively be a 5-strike rule. It will be valid for a 12-month period, and after the 12 months, the strikes resume back to number 1. It's going to be increasingly more difficult and more challenging to end a tenancy, particularly in these circumstances where a tenant is late with rent. And the end of lease process is also going to be quite different. Not only is there greater obligation on providing supporting documentation if you're choosing to sell a property or move into a property, but the end of fixed term lease process is going to be very different. And as I've said to a lot of the property managers with Stockdale Leggo over the last 12 months, property managers are really going to be strategy managers, because you're going to have some very key dates that you can and cannot end your leases. So you'll find if you have a 12-month lease, your property managers will start having conversations with you probably 4, 5, potentially 6 months into that initial 12-month lease. It's not going to be as easy as it has been in the past to end tenancy. Leads on to the removal of the 120-day no reason notice. This notice has been used for many different reasons, even though it does have the name of a no reason notice, particularly if there's a situation where a tenancy just needs to be ended and it doesn't fall under any of the other requirements. And unfortunately, because of the COVID and the introduction of the eviction moratorium, we've lost the ability to utilise this particular section of the Act anymore. So there'll be some further training down the track with regards to property managers on how they utilise all the different sections. I think on the last one, which I think is also something for everyone to take away, making sure that they understand that compensation is now going to be compulsory to be paid to tenants for all sales campaigns. The compensation amount is 50% of the daily rate per inspection. So if you're running a private sales campaign and you have 5 inspections per week, then it's 50% of the day's rent of each of those 5 inspections. If you're running an open for inspection, when eventually we're able to, it would only be 50% of that one day. But again, there would be some more information that will come out with regards to how to facilitate that moving forward. And I think that's a very quick snapshot of quite a few changes that are happening in the coming few months.
That's great. Thank you so much, Leah. Just for everyone's information, Leah's actually working closely with Stockdale Leggo. We have been working with her for a good couple of years now. As we move into this new legislation and the changes, we go through the moratorium and everything that's been going on this year, Leah has been doing a lot of work around the training and educating with our group. So we couldn't really ask for a higher qualified educator for the property managers within Stockdale and Leggo, but it can in turn ensure that every one of you know that your investment is in the best hands possible. So thank you to everybody tonight who's taken time out of their evenings to listen in. We did go 3 minutes over time. We hope it has been educational, and I anticipate that many of you may have further questions from what you've heard this evening. So I encourage you to reach out to your property manager or to the director of the office that you're working with. We're all here to support you on your investment journey, and do let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much and have a great night.